A second human clinical trial of a potential COVID-19 vaccine has been paused because one of the participants developed an unexplained illness. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine candidate is one of 7 potential vaccines now in phase 3 of human clinical trials. All of them must pass this phase to prove they are safe and effective in humans. Suspending a vaccine trial is not unusual, but never has the world been watching this process as closely or waiting as anxiously. Eric Sorensen explains what we know and don't know.
It is a setback for Johnson & Johnson, one person in its vaccine trial with an unexplained illness. It's not uncommon, especially in such a huge trial with 60,000 participants. The company says it has temporarily paused further dosing in all its trials. It's investigating whether the illness is related to the vaccine. The patient could have received a placebo. And it says such illnesses are an expected part of clinical studies. AstraZeneca also paused its vaccine trials temporarily after 2 participants fell ill last month, one with serious spinal inflammation. Experts say it's a good sign that vaccines are not being pushed out hastily.
The public can know that there is an independent data board that's going to be looking at this, and we know in Canada that Health Canada is not going to authorize a vaccine that is not safe for public use.
The whole world wants a vaccine, but there are concerns about safety being compromised by politics. The U.S. president wanted to announce a vaccine before the U.S. election, though he acknowledges now it may not be approved on his timetable.
I think we should have it before the election, but frankly, the politics gets involved, and that's okay. They want to play their games. It's going to be right after the election.
Still, the scale of the research worldwide is astonishing. Vaccine trials at different stages are happening in laboratories from France to the United States and from Brazil to Germany. In all, around 100 vaccines are being developed. And human tests are underway on volunteers from China to the UK to Australia. More than 40 vaccines are in clinical human trials.
I don't think there's been anything of this scale before.
Another hopeful sign, 180 countries have committed to the World Health Organization's effort to finance vaccines so countries rich and poor will get them.
It sets a good example for believing in and trying to achieve equitable access of vaccines.
Meantime, Canadian officials are confident in the Johnson & Johnson evaluation.
I'm sure people will resume the trial as soon as they are satisfied that patient safety isn't compromised.
COVID-19 research is happening with remarkable speed as the world waits for a vaccine that will both protect from the virus and do no harm. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
One of the many questions scientists still have is whether you can get COVID-19 more than once. The U.S. now has a confirmed case of a patient who was reinfected, and his second illness was worse than the first. The case, published in The Lancet, involves a 25-year-old man with no known immune disorders. He tested positive in April and recovered, then went on to have 2 negative tests. And 48 days after that first positive test, he tested positive again. Researchers say what is worrisome is his second illness was worse than the first. The man required oxygen and ended up in the hospital. He has since recovered again. Similar cases have been reported in other countries, and the findings suggest exposure to the virus may not guarantee immunity, but much more research is needed. South of the border, just 3 weeks until the presidential election, and COVID-19 cases keep rising. At least 37 states have had an increase in cases in the last 2 weeks. Some are setting new records. President Trump has told Americans not to let the virus dominate them. But the fact is, the pandemic is both a personal and a political issue for millions of Americans. Jackson Proskow reports.
Months into the pandemic, and these are the worst days yet in many states.
Today's numbers show more new positive cases, more hospitalizations, and more deaths than we've had during the entire pandemic.
In the last week, 7 states have set daily records for new cases. Several are on the brink of running out of hospital beds, what may be the start of the feared fall wave.
If we do not work very hard to push down the number of cases to the lowest number possible, we're going to start paying for it as it gets colder and people are indoors.
That grim reality is still being ignored by President Donald Trump, who appeared maskless while tossing out masks at a campaign rally in Florida before baselessly claiming that his own fight with COVID-19 has left him immune.
I went through it. Now they say I'm immune. I feel so powerful. I'll walk into that audience. I'll walk in there. I'll kiss everyone in that audience.
There's no proof that long-term immunity exists. There is mounting evidence that Trump's risky rallies are spreading the virus. More than a dozen people who attended this event in Minnesota have since tested positive.
His reckless personal conduct since his diagnosis has been unconscionable. The longer Donald Trump is president, the more reckless he seems to get.
President Trump is recovering from the coronavirus, and so is America.
Trump remains undeterred and is now using the words of his top infectious disease expert, made months ago out of context, in an attempt to rewrite history.
I can't imagine that anybody could be doing more.
3 weeks before the election, the pandemic has become the defining issue of the campaign, leading to incredible scenes as long lines form for early voting. But there is still no sense of better days ahead as the pandemic threatens to shape daily life for months to come. Jackson Proskow, Global News, Washington.